Welcome to my channel, The World of Science Fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.
The crimson dunes of Kar-Ren stretched endlessly under twin suns that burned without mercy. Kyle Reed squinted through the haze of heat, his parched lips cracking as he scanned the horizon. 6 days since the crash. 6 days of wandering this hellscape alone. The twisted wreckage of his cargo ship now miles behind him. "Anyone copy?" Kyle rasped into his communicator, the device crackling with static. "Sam, Lena, anyone?" Only the whisper of sand answered him. Kyle checked his water supply, barely half a canteen left. He'd rationed carefully, but desert planets were unforgiving. His crew, his friends, were out there somewhere. He refused to entertain any other possibility. They'd survived pirate attacks, asteroid fields, and that mess on Kalos 9. They would survive this. "I'm coming for you," he muttered, adjusting the makeshift fabric shield protecting his neck from the brutal suns. The cargo ship's emergency beacon had activated upon impact, but who knew how long before anyone picked up the signal? The Talarian Shipping Company wasn't exactly known for its rapid response teams. No, if Kyle wanted to live, if he wanted to find his scattered crew, he'd have to do it himself. As afternoon bled into evening, the temperature plummeted with alarming speed. Kyle's breath formed small clouds as he trudged up a particularly steep dune. At its peak, he paused to catch his breath, muscles burning with exhaustion. The landscape transformed around him as the primary sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert in shades of violet and deep crimson. Something moved. Kyle dropped instinctively, pressing himself against the cooling sand. There, about 50 meters away, a disturbance near a cluster of jagged rock formations. He narrowed his eyes, wishing for the millionth time that he hadn't lost his field glasses in the crash. The movement came again, more deliberate this time. A figure emerged from behind the rocks, tall and fluid in motion. Even at this distance, Kyle could tell it wasn't human. The alien's skin caught the fading light, reflecting a deep cobalt blue that stood out starkly against the red landscape. Kyle remained motionless, weighing his options. The alien hadn't spotted him yet. He could retreat down the dune, find another route, avoid contact altogether. But something about the way the figure moved, predatory, confident, told Kyle this being knew the desert, knew how to survive here. And surviving was precisely what Kyle needed. Before he could decide, the alien's head snapped in his direction. Golden eyes locked onto his position with unnerving precision. In one fluid motion, the alien retrieved a long bone-white spear from a back holster and crouched into a fighting stance. "Hell," Kyle muttered, slowly rising to his feet, hands raised in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I'm not looking for trouble." The alien was female, he realized as she stalked closer, her movements reminiscent of apex predators he'd observed on other worlds. Her face was angular, marked with ritual scarring across her cheekbones. A mane of silver-white hair was pulled back in intricate braids adorned with small bones and beads. The golden eyes that studied him held no warmth, no mercy, only calculation. She barked something in a language his universal translator couldn't decipher, the words harsh and clipped. When Kyle didn't respond, she jabbed her spear in his direction and repeated herself, louder this time. "I don't understand," Kyle said, keeping his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "My ship crashed. I'm looking for my crew." The warrior tilted her head, clearly not comprehending his words either. She took another step forward, spear leveled at his chest. Kyle's military training kicked in. He assessed the situation with clinical detachment. The warrior was faster than him, better adapted to the environment. The spear gave her reach. His sidearm had been lost in the crash. Hand-to-hand combat would be suicide. When she spoke again, it was with deliberate slowness, as if talking to a child. Her free hand gestured toward the horizon behind her, then made a slashing motion across her throat. The message was clear enough. Leave or die. Kyle shook his head. "I can't. My friends..." He mimicked looking through binoculars, then pointed in various directions. The warrior's expression hardened. Without warning, she let out a war cry that made Kyle's blood freeze. Her body coiled like a spring, and then she hurled the spear with devastating force. Time slowed. Kyle saw the bone spear spinning toward him, its wicked point aimed at his heart. Years of combat training took over. His body moved before his mind could catch up. His hands shot out, grasping the shaft of the spear mere inches from his chest. The impact nearly knocked him backward. Pain lanced through his palms as splinters dug into his skin, but he maintained his grip, the spear's momentum arrested by his desperate catch. Silence fell over the dune. The warrior stood motionless, her golden eyes wide with what Kyle could only interpret as shock. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She took a step back, then another. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. Kyle lowered the spear, keeping his eyes on the warrior. "Look," he said, "I don't want to fight." She approached slowly, her gaze fixed not on Kyle, but on the spear in his hands. When she stood before him, she dropped to one knee and bowed her head, speaking words in a reverent tone that needed no translation. Kyle blinked in confusion. "I don't understand." The warrior looked up, studying his face with new intensity. She placed a hand on her chest. "Teresa," she said clearly. "Kyle," he responded, pointing to himself. Teresa rose, reaching slowly for the spear. Kyle handed it back, relieved to be rid of the weapon. But instead of reclaiming it, she pressed it back toward him, speaking rapidly, her tone insistent. The sun had fully set now, leaving them in the eerie blue glow of Ka-Ren's 3 moons. The temperature continued to drop. Kyle shivered, his thin flight suit inadequate protection against the desert night. Teresa noticed. She gestured toward the rock formation from which she'd emerged, then back at Kyle. An invitation. With few options and the night growing dangerously cold, Kyle nodded. Teresa turned and began walking, clearly expecting him to follow. As they approached the rocks, Kyle realized they concealed the entrance to a small cave. Inside, the remnants of a fire glowed, casting warm light on the stone walls. Teresa rekindled the flames with practiced efficiency. As the fire grew, she removed a small device from a pouch at her waist and adjusted something on its surface. When she spoke next, her words were translated into broken but understandable English. "You caught my spear," she said, her voice laced with disbelief. "No one catches the spear." Kyle settled by the fire, grateful for its warmth. "What does that mean?" Teresa's golden eyes reflected the dancing flames. "By ancient law of Zertan, you are now my eternal companion." Her expression suggested this was anything but welcome news. "Our fates bound together." Kyle stared at her. "Because I caught a spear?" "Not just spear," Teresa replied sharply. "When warriors challenge, to catch is to claim bond. No one has done this in 7 generations. Kyle ran a hand through his sand-caked hair. "But look, I'm just trying to find my crew and get off this planet. I'm not looking to bond with anyone." Teresa's eyes narrowed. "You think I desire this? My tribe faces war with desert nomads. You are a burden I cannot afford." She stabbed at the fire with a stick, sending sparks flying. "But oath is oath. Zertan die before breaking sacred word." Kyle watched her, considering. An idea formed in his exhausted mind. "What if I help you with the nomads? In exchange, you help me find my crew." Teresa studied him for a long moment. "What skills do you possess, Skyfallen One?" "I'm a pilot, but I was military before that. Combat trained." Kyle gestured to the spear he'd caught. "Obviously have decent reflexes." A ghost of a smile touched Teresa's lips, there and gone in an instant. "We leave at first light. My tribe's oasis lies 2 days' journey north. Your friends, if they live, may be there. Zertan scouts patrol far." "Thank you," Kyle said, genuinely grateful. Teresa shook her head. "Do not thank me. Bond of spear is curse, not blessing. Sleep now. Desert shows no mercy to the weary." Kyle didn't need to be told twice. He stretched out on the cave floor, using his arm as a pillow. As exhaustion claimed him, his last conscious thought was of his scattered crew, hoping they'd found shelter against the freezing desert night. Dawn broke harshly over Ka-Ren. Kyle woke to find Teresa already prepared to depart, her few possessions packed efficiently. She handed him a water skin without comment. "The water here is safe?" Kyle asked, sniffing the liquid suspiciously. "No water on Ka-Ren is safe," Teresa replied. "This is least likely to kill you." Kyle drank cautiously, finding the water had a mineral taste, but was otherwise unremarkable. As they exited the cave, the heat already building despite the early hour, Terissa pointed to a distant smudge on the horizon. Nomad raiding party, she explained. They move toward tribe's territory. We must hurry. They set a grueling pace across the dunes. Despite her slender build, Terissa moved with tireless efficiency, navigating the shifting sands as if by instinct. Kyle struggled to keep up, his body still recovering from the crash and days of exposure. Your vessel, Terissa said as they crested a particularly steep dune. It fell from sky like angry star. Why come to Kar Ren? Nothing here but sand and death. Kyle wiped sweat from his brow. We didn't choose to crash. We were on a standard cargo run to the Aldebaran system when our navigation failed. Pulled us off course, straight into your atmosphere. What cargo? Medical supplies mainly, some tech for the mining colonies. Terissa processed this information silently. After a moment, she said, your kind has visited Kar Ren before. Traders. They bring metal tools, take our medicinal plants. They do not stay. I don't plan to stay either, Kyle assured her. By midday, the heat had become nearly unbearable. Terissa led them to a small outcropping that provided meager shade. As they rested, Kyle noticed something odd about the sands several hundred meters to their left. It seemed to be moving. Terissa, he said quietly, pointing. She followed his gaze and immediately tensed. Sandcrawler, juvenile, still dangerous. Do not move. The creature was partially submerged, only its segmented back visible as it undulated just beneath the desert's surface. It paused, then changed direction, heading straight for them. It senses our vibration, Terissa whispered, slowly reaching for her spear. When I say run, you run. Do not stop. Kyle nodded, muscles coiled in readiness. The sandcrawler accelerated, a churning wave of red granules marking its approach. When it was 50 meters away, Terissa shouted, Run! They bolted from the outcropping in opposite directions. The creature hesitated, then pursued Kyle, perhaps sensing he was the less adapted to the terrain. He sprinted across the sand, feet sinking with each step, slowing him crucially. The crawler gained ground. Kyle could hear the sickening sound of its mandibles clicking beneath the sand. Suddenly, Terissa appeared in his peripheral vision, running parallel to his path. She hurled something small and metallic toward the creature. The object emitted a high-pitched whine upon impact. The sandcrawler veered sharply away, disappearing beneath the dunes with astonishing speed. Kyle bent double, hands on his knees, gasping for breath. What was that? Sonic disruptor, Terissa explained, retrieving the device from where the creature had fled. Disturbs their sensory organs. Temporary effect. She returned it to her pouch. You run slow, will not survive long in deep desert. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Kyle muttered. They continued their journey as the day waned. By dusk, they'd reached a series of rocky plateaus that broke up the monotony of the dunes. Terissa led him to a narrow crevice between two rock faces. We rest here tonight, she declared. Tomorrow, we reach tribe's outer territory. As they prepared a small camp, Kyle broached the subject foremost on his mind. These friends of mine, my crew. 5 of them. What are the chances your tribe found them? Terissa considered the question. Zirton patrol wide territories. If your people survived crash, if they found water, if predators did not find them first, she shrugged. Possible. Not exactly reassuring. Truth rarely is. They ate a sparse meal of dried meat and something Terissa called desert fruit, tough-skinned and bitter, but surprisingly nutritious. As night settled around them, the temperature dropped precipitously once again. Why do your people stay here, Kyle asked, on a planet so hostile? Terissa's expression softened slightly in the light of their small fire. Karen is mother and teacher. Harsh, yes, but she protects us too. Outsiders cannot survive her trials. This keeps Zirton free. Her eyes met his across the flames. Until now, perhaps. I'm not here to change anything, Kyle said, just to find my friends and leave. Change comes regardless of intention, Terissa replied cryptically. She spoke no more that night, leaving Kyle to ponder her words as he drifted into an uneasy sleep. The attack came just before dawn. Kyle woke to Terissa's hand over his mouth, her finger pressed to her lips in the universal sign for silence. She pointed upward, toward the rim of the crevice where they'd sheltered. Shadowy figures moved against the lightning sky. Kyle counted 6, no, 7 silhouettes. Nomads, Teresa breathed against his ear. They tracked us. Kyle reached instinctively for a weapon he didn't have. Teresa pressed the shaft of her spear into his hands, then drew a wicked-looking blade from her boot. The first nomad descended into the crevice swiftly, almost silently. In the growing light, Kyle could see the differences between these desert dwellers and Teresa's people. Where she was blue-skinned and lithe, the nomad was bulkier, with rust-colored skin and a face partially concealed by protective wrappings. Teresa struck without hesitation. Her blade slashed across the nomad's chest, drawing an angry hiss, but no blood. Their armor, though light, was effective. The nomad retaliated with a curved sword that Teresa barely avoided. 2 more attackers dropped into the crevice. Kyle surged forward, wielding the bone spear with precision born of military drills. He caught the first nomad in the shoulder, the spear's point finding a gap in the armor. The nomad howled in pain. "Behind you!" Teresa shouted. Kyle spun just in time to deflect a blow from a serrated blade. He pivoted, using the spear's length to create distance, then thrust again, this time catching his attacker in the leg. The confined space of the crevice worked to their advantage, preventing the nomads from surrounding them. Back to back, Kyle and Teresa fended off the assault, their movements quickly synchronizing, despite never having fought together. When a nomad lunged at Teresa while she was engaged with another, Kyle swept the attacker's feet from under them with the butt of the spear. When Kyle was momentarily pinned against the rock wall, Teresa hurled her knife with deadly accuracy, embedding it in his assailant's arm. The battle was brief but vicious. 3 nomads lay wounded, the others retreated, scaling the crevice walls with surprising agility. "They'll be back," Teresa said, reclaiming her spear from Kyle. Blood trickled from a cut above her eye. "With more warriors." Kyle examined a gash on his forearm. "Then we should move." They gathered their meager supplies and left the crevice, Teresa setting a pace even more punishing than the previous days. The landscape gradually changed, the endless dunes giving way to rockier terrain dotted with hardy vegetation. "The oasis is near," Teresa explained as they paused briefly for water. "These plants draw from deep aquifers." Kyle nodded, too exhausted for conversation. His encounter with the nomads had driven home just how dangerous this planet was, and how fortunate he'd been to encounter Teresa rather than her enemies. As they resumed their journey, a distant sound caught Kyle's attention. A low, thunderous rumble that seemed to make the very ground tremble. "Sandstorm?" he asked. Teresa's expression darkened. "No, worse." She quickened her pace. "We must reach tribe before nightfall." The rumbling grew intermittently louder throughout the day, though its source remained elusive. By late afternoon, they crested a rocky ridge, and Kyle stopped in his tracks at the site below. A vast depression in the desert floor cradled an unexpected paradise. Lush vegetation surrounded pools of glittering water. Structures built of stone, bone, and some iridescent material Kyle couldn't identify dotted the landscape. People moved about the oasis, all blue-skinned like Teresa, engaged in various activities. "You're home," Kyle said. Teresa nodded, a rare smile ghosting across her lips. "Sanctuary of the Zirtan." They descended toward the oasis. As they approached, warriors emerged to meet them, spears at the ready. Teresa called out in her native tongue, and the warriors lowered their weapons, though their gazes remained suspicious as they evaluated Kyle. An older warrior stepped forward, his body adorned with elaborate scarring that marked him as someone of importance. He spoke rapidly to Teresa, occasionally gesturing toward Kyle. The conversation grew heated. Teresa's posture became increasingly rigid, her responses clipped and forceful. Finally, she turned to Kyle. "Raken demands to know why I bring outsider to sacred waters," she explained. "I have told him of the spear bond." Raken studied Kyle with undisguised contempt. He spoke again, this time slowly enough for Kyle's translator to interpret fragments. "Ancient laws, meaningless if tribe perishes. Council will decide." They were escorted into the settlement, drawing curious stares from everyone they passed. Children with wary golden eyes peeked from behind structures, pointing at Kyle's alien features. Adults whispered among themselves, their expressions ranging from fear to outright hostility. Teresa led Kyle to a small dwelling at the settlement's edge. "You will stay here," she said. "Do not wander. Some warriors would gladly kill you despite the spear bond." Charming, Cal remarked. What about my crew? Are any of them here? I will inquire, Teresa promised. Rest now. Council gathers at moonrise to decide your fate. Left alone, Kyle explored the simple dwelling. A sleeping pallet occupied one corner, while various vessels and containers lined stone shelves. A small pool of water near the rear seemed to be fed by an underground spring. Luxury on this parched world. He had just finished washing the grime of travel from his face when the dwelling's entrance curtain parted. Kyle tensed, expecting Teresa or perhaps a hostile warrior. Instead, a familiar face appeared. Sam? Kyle breathed, hardly daring to believe his eyes. The ship's mechanic grinned despite a nasty gash on his cheek and an arm bound in some kind of splint. Captain, I knew you'd make it. They embraced fiercely. Kyle pulled back to examine his friend. Are you all right? How did you get here? The others? One question at a time, Sam laughed, though it was tinged with pain. I'm okay, busted arm, some cuts and bruises. Could have been worse. He settled on a stone bench. These blue folks found me half dead 2 days after the crash. Brought me here, patched me up best they could. Have you seen anyone else from the crew? Sam's expression sobered. Just Lena. She's been helping their healers. You know her, making herself useful even in a crisis. Relief washed over Kyle. 2 of his crew accounted for. What about the others? No sign yet, Sam admitted. But hey, we found each other, right? There's hope. The rumbling sound Kyle had heard earlier returned, louder this time, making the vessels on the shelves tremble. What is that? Kyle asked. Sam's face grew serious. The locals call it coral, some kind of massive sand creature. They're terrified of it. He lowered his voice. And get this, they think our ship woke it up. The vibrations from the crash or something. Great, Kyle muttered. So we're not exactly welcome guests. That's putting it mildly. The only reason they haven't tossed us back into the desert is because of Lena. She saved one of their elders with her medical kit. Before Kyle could respond, the curtain parted again. Lena entered, her dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, her medic's vest still somehow immaculate despite the desert conditions. Captain, she said warmly, embracing him, you look terrible. Kyle laughed. Good to see you too, Doc. Lena examined his injuries with professional detachment. These cuts need cleaning. Desert bacteria here are particularly nasty. She produced a small medical kit from her vest pocket. As she treated his wounds, Kyle filled them in on his journey with Teresa and the strange spear bond that had saved his life. So you're married to a warrior princess, Sam teased. Could be worse. It's not marriage, Kyle clarified, wincing as Lena applied antiseptic to his arm. More like, I don't know, a sacred obligation? The Zirtan take their traditions very seriously, Lena said. From what I've gathered, this bond is considered unbreakable. The rumbling returned, loud enough to make conversation difficult for several seconds. That thing is getting closer, Kyle observed once it subsided. Lena nodded grimly. The tribe is preparing for evacuation. There's another oasis 3 days' journey west, but many of the elders and children won't survive the trek. She finished bandaging Kyle's arm. I've been trying to help them prepare, but resources are limited. And what about us? Sam asked. What's our plan, Captain? Kyle considered their situation. First priority is finding the rest of the crew. Then we need to assess the ship, see if repairs are possible. I managed to salvage some emergency equipment before the tribe found me, Sam said, including the portable beacon. It's been transmitting, but, he shrugged, this system isn't exactly a major shipping lane. We work with what we've got, Kyle said firmly. For now, we help these people. They've kept you two alive, treated your injuries. We owe them. The dwelling's curtain parted once more, revealing Teresa. Her expression was grim. Council has reached decision, she announced. You may stay until next dawn. Then you must leave our lands. All of us? Kyle asked, gesturing to Sam and Lena. All outsiders. Teresa's tone was flat, but something in her eyes suggested she disagreed with the ruling. That's a death sentence, Lena protested. The deep desert is... I know what it is, Teresa snapped. She lowered her voice. Raken fears outsiders will bring more trouble. The beast approaches. Tribe prepares to flee. The ground trembled again, more violently this time. Dust sifted from the dwelling's ceiling. How close is it? Kyle asked. Too close, Teresa replied. It will reach Oasis by tomorrow's dusk. An idea formed in Kyle's mind. What if we could stop it, divert it away from the Oasis? Teresa frowned. Impossible. Carl cannot be stopped. Maybe not by conventional means, Kyle said, but we're not conventional. Sam, what equipment did you salvage? The mechanic thought for a moment. Some tools, emergency rations, the beacon. Oh, and a couple of mining charges. Was going to use them to signal search parties, but… Mining charges? Kyle interrupted. Explosives? Sam nodded slowly, comprehension dawning. You're thinking of setting a trap for this thing. Exactly. Kyle turned to Teresa. Is there a place nearby, a canyon, a ravine, something we could lure the creature into? Teresa hesitated. There is Ancestor's Cut, a narrow pass through stone mountains, half-day's journey south. But Carl does not follow. It chooses its own path. It follows vibrations, right? Kyle pressed. What if we created vibrations strong enough to attract it? Lead it right where we want it. And then bring the whole place down on top of it, Sam finished, excitement building in his voice. It could work. Lena looked skeptical. And who exactly is going to play bait for this monster? I will, Kyle said without hesitation. We will, Teresa corrected, her golden eyes meeting his. Spear bond requires I fight at your side. There was a newfound respect in her gaze, even in foolish endeavors. We need to convince the council, Lena pointed out. Teresa's expression hardened. Raken will never agree. He already plans to use outsiders as distraction during Tribe's escape. Use us how? Sam asked. As sacrifice, Teresa said bluntly, left behind to draw Carl's attention while Tribe flees. A heavy silence fell over the group. Then we don't ask permission, Kyle decided. We act tonight. The plan came together quickly. Sam would modify the mining charges to create maximum impact when detonated in the narrow confines of Ancestor's Cut. Lena would prepare medical supplies and help the tribe's evacuation efforts as cover for their real intentions. Kyle and Teresa would scout the canyon, determining the optimal placement for the explosives. As dusk approached, Kyle and Teresa slipped away from the settlement, heading south toward the canyon. The journey was tense, both aware that discovery by Raken's warriors would end their mission before it began. Why help us? Kyle asked as they traversed a particularly rugged section of terrain. You could have let Raken sacrifice us. Teresa was silent for several steps. The spear chose you, she finally said. I cannot explain, but it was not accident. And Raken, she stopped abruptly. What about him? Teresa's jaw tightened. He was not always as he is now. Fear changes people, makes them cruel. She increased her pace, ending the conversation. They reached Ancestor's Cut as the moons rose. The canyon was impressive, towering walls of red stone carved by ancient waters long since vanished. Its narrowest point would barely allow two people to walk abreast. Perfect, Kyle murmured. We place the charges along these upper sections. When Carl enters, we trigger them, bringing down enough rock to trap or kill it. Teresa surveyed the canyon with a practiced eye. Stone is unstable. Entire passage could collapse. That's what we want. Yes, but those who lure beast in may not escape collapse. Their eyes met in the moonlight, the implication clear. We'll be fast, Kyle assured her. Teresa didn't look convinced, but she nodded. There is another matter, how to lure Carl here. It follows deepest vibrations. Your charges may not be enough. Kyle had been pondering this problem. What's the biggest vehicle your people have? The rover, Teresa replied. Ancient machine from before my time. Still functions, but fuel is precious. If we overload its engine, the vibrations would be significant, might be enough to attract our target. They marked potential locations for the explosives, then began the return journey to the oasis. As they traveled, Kyle noticed Teresa becoming increasingly pensive. There's something you're not telling me, he said. Teresa slowed her pace. When she spoke, her voice was uncharacteristically hesitant. My father was chief before Raken. He died defending Oasis from Nomad Raid. I was to lead after him, but I failed to save him. Council gave leadership to Raken instead. I'm sorry, Kyle said quietly. I tell you this because you should understand stakes. If plan fails, if Oasis is destroyed, my people will suffer. Many will die. Her golden eyes glimmered in the moonlight. I risk their lives on your plan, outsider. It's our best chance, Kyle said. Maybe our only chance. Teresa nodded solemnly. Then let us make it count. When they returned to the settlement, they found Sam and Lena waiting anxiously in Kyle's dwelling. We've got problems, Sam announced without preamble. Raken's warriors are watching us. I couldn't get to the charges without drawing attention. And worse, Lena added, they're accelerating evacuation plans. They'll leave at first light, with or without the elderly and injured who can't travel quickly. Abandoning their own people? Kyle asked, appalled. Raken calls it preserving the strong, Lena replied bitterly. Teresa's expression darkened with anger. This is not Zyrtane way. We protect all or none. We need a distraction, Kyle decided. Something to draw attention away from Sam while he retrieves the charges. Before they could develop this idea further, shouts erupted outside. Kyle pushed aside the dwelling's curtain to see warriors running toward the oasis's edge, spears ready. Nomads, Teresa explained, peering over his shoulder. They attack under cover of darkness. The timing couldn't have been worse or better. This is our chance, Kyle realized. While they're defending against the raid, we implement our plan. In the chaos that followed, their small group split up. Sam slipped away to retrieve the explosives. Lena headed to the healer's area to gather supplies. Kyle and Teresa made their way to the ancient rover Teresa had mentioned, stored in a structure near the settlement center. The vehicle was like nothing Kyle had seen before, a hybrid of salvaged technology and ingenious adaptations. 6 massive wheels supported a platform reinforced with bone and metal. The engine was exposed, modified countless times over generations. Can you drive this thing? Kyle asked. Better than anyone in tribe, Teresa replied with a hint of pride. I learned as child before. She trailed off. The sounds of battle intensified outside. Screams mingled with the clash of weapons. The ground trembled periodically, not from combat, but from the approaching Karul. Sam appeared in the doorway, a pack slung carefully over his shoulder. Got them. 6 charges, should be enough if placed strategically. Lena arrived moments later, medical supplies packed efficiently in a satchel. The nomad attack is worse than expected. They've breached the eastern perimeter. As if to confirm her words, the structure's entrance curtain was suddenly torn aside. 3 nomad warriors stood silhouetted against the night, their weapons raised. Teresa reacted instantly, her spear a blur as she charged forward. Kyle grabbed a metal tool from the rover and followed her into the fray. The confined space worked against the nomads. They couldn't effectively surround their targets. Kyle deflected a blow from a serrated blade, then countered with a strike to his attacker's knee. The nomad stumbled, but didn't fall. Behind him, Kyle heard Sam shout a warning. He ducked just as a second nomad's weapon whistled over his head. Teresa dispatched her opponent with brutal efficiency, then turned to assist Kyle. Together, they forced the nomads back through the entrance. Outside, the battle raged throughout the settlement. Fires had broken out in several dwellings, casting macabre shadows across the fighting. We need to move now, Kyle shouted over the din. Get the rover started. Teresa leaped onto the vehicle, manipulating controls with practiced ease. The engine coughed, then roared to life, a sound that momentarily rose above the battle noise. Sam secured the explosives in a compartment while Lena climbed aboard, her expression grim. Where's the rest of the crew going to rendezvous with us? She asked. I don't know if they're even alive, Kyle admitted, climbing onto the platform beside her. But if they are, they'll head for the ship. We'll go there after we deal with Carl. Teresa guided the rover through the settlement, avoiding the worst of the fighting. As they reached the oasis's edge, a commanding voice called out in the Zyrtean language. Raken stood before them, flanked by warriors. His scarred face contorted with rage as he barked orders. The warriors raised their weapons. He orders them to stop us, Teresa translated, not slowing the rover. He says we steal tribal property, betray Zertan. Can you get around them? Kyle asked, eyeing the narrowing path ahead. Teresa's answer was to accelerate, steering directly toward the blockade. At the last moment, she swerved, taking the rover perilously close to the edge of a steep embankment. Raken's warriors scattered, unwilling to be crushed beneath the massive wheels. That's one way to do it, Sam muttered, clinging to the rover's frame. Raken's furious shouts faded behind them as they cleared the settlement's boundaries. The desert opened before them, bathed in the ethereal light of Kar-Ren's triple moons. The canyon is approximately 10 kilometers south, Teresa said, navigating the rover over the uneven terrain. We should reach it before dawn. The ground trembled beneath them, stronger now, more frequent. Karul was getting closer. How big is this thing anyway? Sam asked, securing the explosive charges as the rover bounced over a rocky patch. No one knows exact size, Teresa replied. Those who see Karul rarely live to describe it. Stories say it towers above dunes, that its hide deflects spears like rain. Comforting, Lena remarked dryly. They traveled in tense silence for a time, each lost in their own thoughts. The rover's engine growled steadily, its vibrations broadcasting their location to anything sensitive to such disturbances, including Karul. There, Teresa eventually said, pointing ahead. The dark silhouette of Ancestor's Cut was visible against the horizon, its jagged walls reaching skyward. As they approached the canyon, Kyle outlined the final details of their plan. Sam, you'll place the charges at the points we marked earlier. The most unstable sections of the canyon walls. Lena, you'll wait with him, ready to treat any injuries. Teresa and I will take the rover through the canyon, drawing Karl in. Once it's fully inside the passage, Sam triggers the charges. And how do you plan to get out before everything comes down? Lena demanded. There's a natural shelf about halfway through, Teresa said, high enough to escape falling rocks, accessible by climbing. If we time it right, Lena emphasized but didn't object further. They reached the canyon entrance as the sky began to lighten with pre-dawn glow. Sam quickly went to work, scaling the walls with surprising agility despite his injured arm, placing the charges at strategic points. While he worked, Kyle surveyed the terrain. The canyon's floor was relatively smooth, good for the rover's speed. The walls rose almost vertically for 30 meters before tapering slightly. The shelf Teresa had mentioned was visible, a natural outcropping about 15 meters up, roughly halfway through the passage. This will work, he said with more confidence than he felt. Teresa checked her weapons, the spear, plus several smaller blades. If rocks do not kill Karl, we may need to finish it ourselves. The notion of facing the creature directly sent a chill through Kyle, but he nodded grimly. Sam returned, dust covering his clothes. Charges are set. Remote detonator is ready. He handed the small device to Kyle. One press activates all 6 charges simultaneously. Good work. Kyle pocketed the detonator. You and Lena stay hidden at the canyon entrance. If this goes sideways, it won't, Lena interrupted firmly. Just come back in one piece, Captain. Kyle nodded, then climbed onto the rover beside Teresa. She revved the engine, the sound echoing off the canyon walls. Ready? She asked, her golden eyes meeting his. Ready. Teresa guided the rover into the canyon, the vehicle's bulk barely fitting through the narrowest points. They proceeded slowly at first, allowing Sam and Lena to take their positions at the entrance. Now we make noise, Teresa said, pushing the engine to its limits. The rover lurched forward, gathering speed, its ancient motor screaming in protest. The vibrations were tremendous, exactly what they needed to attract the Karul. The rover bounced and shuddered over the uneven canyon floor, each impact sending shockwaves through the ground. They were approximately halfway through the canyon when they felt it, a rhythmic trembling distinct from the rover's vibrations, growing stronger, closer. It's coming, Teresa said, her voice tight. Kyle twisted in his seat, looking back toward the canyon entrance. At first he saw nothing but the dust kicked up by their passage. Then the dust cloud parted, revealing movement. Something massive was entering the canyon. Faster, Kyle urged. Teresa pushed the rover to its absolute limit. The engine's pitch rose to a tortured wail as they raced toward the canyon's exit. Behind them, the creature fully entered the passage. Kyle caught glimpses through the dust. A colossal form, segmented like the juvenile sandcrawler they'd encountered, but exponentially larger. Its mandibles scraped against the canyon walls as it pursued them, tearing loose stones that clattered to the ground. We need to reach the shelf, Teresa shouted over the engine's roar. She pointed ahead to where the natural outcropping protruded from the canyon wall. The rover was nearly beneath it now. Kyle readied himself to jump, the detonator clutched tightly in his hand. Teresa counted down with her fingers. 3, 2, 1. They leapt simultaneously, abandoning the rover as it continued its unmanned journey toward the canyon exit. Kyle's fingers found purchase on the rough stone of the shelf, his muscles straining as he pulled himself up. Teresa landed beside him with greater grace, immediately reaching down to help secure his position. Below them, the rover crashed into a boulder, its momentum arrested in a cacophony of twisting metal. The engine died with a final strangled growl. Carl paused, momentarily confused by the sudden cessation of vibrations. The creature was fully inside the canyon now, exactly where they wanted it. Now, Teresa whispered. Kyle pressed the detonator. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world exploded. The charges detonated in sequence, each blast triggering a cascade of falling rock. The canyon walls shuddered, then began to collapse inward. Massive boulders crashed down onto Carl's armored back. The creature shrieked, a sound like metal tearing, and tried to retreat, but it was too late. The shelf beneath Kyle and Teresa shook violently. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface. "It's breaking apart!" Kyle shouted, grabbing Teresa's arm. They scrambled toward the canyon wall as their perch disintegrated. A narrow crevice offered potential shelter, barely large enough for 2 people. They squeezed inside just as the last of the shelf gave way. Darkness and noise enveloped them, the air filled with choking dust. Kyle pulled Teresa close, shielding her as best he could as the canyon continued to collapse around them. For what seemed like an eternity, the world was chaos and terror. Then gradually silence fell. Kyle coughed, his lungs burning with dust. "Are you all right?" Teresa shifted against him. "Alive," she confirmed, her voice raspy. "You?" "Same." He tried to peer out of their shelter, but darkness was complete. "We're trapped." "Perhaps." Teresa produced a small light from a pouch at her belt. The feeble glow revealed their predicament. The crevice had protected them, but rocks blocked their exit. "Can we dig out?" Kyle asked. Teresa examined the blockage. "Stone is loose, possible but dangerous. More could fall." They worked carefully, removing smaller rocks first, creating space to maneuver. Sweat mingled with dust on their skin, creating mud-like streaks. Their progress was painstakingly slow. "Wait," Teresa said suddenly, freezing in place. "Listen." Kyle strained his ears. At first he heard nothing. Then faintly, voices. Someone was calling their names. "Here!" he shouted, his voice breaking. "We're in here!" The digging on the other side intensified. Light began to filter through gaps in the rubble. Finally, a larger stone was pulled away, revealing Sam's dirt-streaked face. "Took you long enough," Kyle quipped, relief making him lightheaded. Sam grinned. "Next time, try not to bring down an entire canyon on yourselves." With Sam and Lena's help, they emerged into the daylight. The canyon was unrecognizable. Where once towering walls had stood, now there was only a massive pile of rubble. No sign of Carl was visible beneath the tons of collapsed rock. "Did we kill it?" Lena asked, scanning the devastation. "If not, we certainly ruined its day," Kyle replied. Teresa stood at the edge of the destruction, her expression solemn. "Ancestors' cut is no more. Centuries of Zeratan history, buried." "I'm sorry," Kyle said, understanding her loss, "but your people will survive." "Yes." She turned to face him, resolution in her golden eyes. "And now we must ensure they know it. Raken will tell them we fled, that we abandoned tribe to nomads and beast." "Then we go back," Kyle decided. "We tell them the truth." They began the long trek back to the oasis on foot, their pace hampered by exhaustion and minor injuries. As they walked, Lena tended to their wounds with her dwindling medical supplies. The ground no longer trembled beneath their feet. Whether Carl was truly dead or merely trapped, the immediate threat had passed. "It worked," Sam said, still sounding somewhat surprised. "Your crazy plan actually worked," Kyle smiled wearily. "Don't sound so shocked." "Oh, I'm shocked," Sam replied. "Just like I was shocked when you outran that security patrol on Gannis Prime, or when you talked that pirate captain into letting us go at Helios Station." "You have history of improbable victories," Teresa observed, a hint of amusement in her voice. "We're overdue for some good luck," Kyle said. They had covered perhaps half the distance to the oasis when they spotted the dust cloud approaching from the north. Teresa tensed, readying her spear. Nomads? Kyle asked, scanning for cover in the barren landscape. No, Teresa replied, squinting against the harsh sunlight. Zertan warriors, on lizard mounts. The riders approached rapidly, the six-legged reptiles they rode capable of impressive speed across the desert terrain. As they drew closer, Teresa straightened, recognition in her eyes. My brother, she said with surprise, and loyal warriors. The lead rider, a younger male with features similar to Teresa's, dismounted with fluid grace. He embraced his sister briefly, then stepped back, speaking rapidly in their native tongue. Teresa listened intently, her expression cycling through surprise, anger, and finally determination. She turned to Kyle. Nomad attack was diversion, she explained. Rakan used chaos to eliminate opponents in tribe, elders who questioned his leadership. He claims I conspired with nomads, says I stole Rover to flee. That's absurd, Lena protested. You were with us the whole time. Truth matters little to Rakan now. He consolidates power, prepares to abandon weaker members during evacuation. Teresa's eyes hardened, unless he is stopped. What do you need from us? Kyle asked without hesitation. Teresa considered her response carefully. Your presence at Oasis will disrupt his narrative. If Tribe sees you return, sees that beast no longer threatens, Raken's fear-mongering loses power. Kyle nodded. Then let's go prove him wrong. Teresa's brother offered his mount to her, choosing to walk alongside. The other warriors did the same for Kyle, Sam, and Lena. The lizard mounts were surprisingly comfortable despite their alien appearance, their gait smooth and efficient over the desert terrain. As they rode, Teresa explained her history with Raken, how he had been her father's trusted advisor, how he had gradually changed after assuming leadership, growing paranoid and cruel. His obsession with strength had eroded the community's traditional values of mutual support and protection. He believes only strongest should survive, she said bitterly. This is not Zertan way. My father taught that we are strong together, not apart. They reached the oasis by midday. The settlement showed signs of the previous night's battle, damaged structures, blood-stained sand, but the nomads had been repelled. Zertan warriors stood guard at the perimeter, clearly surprised to see Teresa and the humans returning. In the settlement's center, Raken was addressing a gathered crowd, his voice carrying across the oasis. He stood elevated on a platform of stone, gesturing dramatically as he spoke. The tribe listened, their expressions fearful and uncertain. Teresa dismounted, her movements deliberate. He tells them Karul approaches, that evacuation must begin immediately. The weak must be left behind for greater good of tribe. Kyle slid from his mount, standing beside her. What's the plan? Truth, she replied simply. They approached the gathering, Teresa leading with confident strides. Her brother and his warriors flanked them protectively. The crowd parted as they recognized who approached, whispers spreading rapidly. Raken's voice faltered mid-sentence as he spotted them, his scarred face contorted with shock, then fury. Teresa, he bellowed, shifting to a language Kyle's translator could interpret. You dare return after your betrayal? Teresa stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. There was no betrayal, Raken. Only a solution you were too frightened to consider. You abandoned your people in their hour of need, fled with outsiders, stole tribal property. We destroyed Karul, Teresa countered, her statement causing a ripple of astonishment through the crowd. The beast is buried beneath ancestors' cut. It will threaten Zertan no more. Raken scoffed, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Impossible. No one can kill Karul. Yet we did, Kyle interjected, stepping forward. While you were planning to abandon your own people, we were saving them. The crowd murmured, many nodding in agreement. Raken's gaze darted between faces, sensing his control slipping. These outsiders lie, he shouted. They seek to divide us, weaken us. The ground no longer trembles, Teresa's brother called out. I have seen the destroyed canyon with my own eyes. The beast is gone. An elderly Zertan stepped forward, her frail body supported by a carved staff. If what they say is true, there is no need for evacuation. No need to leave behind those who cannot travel quickly. Precisely what these outsiders want you to believe. Raken snarled, desperation entering his voice. They conspire with nomads. They... Enough! Terissa's voice cut through his ranting. You speak of strength, Raken, but true strength lies in protecting all Zirtan, not abandoning those you deem weak. She turned to address the tribe directly. My father understood this. I understand this. Do you? The crowd's response was immediate and overwhelming. Voices raised in support, many calling Terissa's name. Raken's few remaining loyal warriors looked uncertain, some lowering their weapons. Raken, seeing his authority crumbling, made a desperate move. He lunged toward Terissa, a concealed blade flashing in his hand. Kyle reacted instinctively, stepping between them. The blade sliced across his shoulder, drawing blood but missing anything vital. Before Raken could strike again, Terissa's spear was at his throat. The spear bond compels me to protect my eternal companion, she said, her voice deadly quiet, even against my own chieftain. Raken froze, trapped by tradition as surely as if bound by chains. The crowd watched in stunned silence as this sacred law, the same one Raken had dismissed as meaningless, now prevented him from continuing his attack. Surrender leadership, Raken, Terissa demanded. Face judgment of council for your attempts to abandon our people. For a tense moment, it seemed Raken might refuse. Then slowly he lowered his weapon. Warriors loyal to Terissa's brother quickly moved to restrain him. As Raken was led away, the tribe surrounded Terissa, many touching her arms or shoulders in gestures of respect. Several approached Kyle, Sam, and Lena, offering similar acknowledgments. Lena immediately set to treating Kyle's wound. Not too deep, she assessed. You were lucky. Story of my life, Kyle replied with a pained smile. The elderly Zirtan, who had spoken earlier, approached them, studying the humans with curious golden eyes. You saved tribe twice, she said, her translator rendering her words in stilted but understandable English. From beast and from Raken's fear. Zirtan owe debt. We helped each other, Kyle corrected gently. That's what people do. The woman nodded, seeming pleased with his response. Council will meet tonight. Terissa will lead now, as was meant to be. She gestured to Kyle's wound. Spear bond proves its wisdom once more. As the day progressed, the oasis transformed. What had been preparations for evacuation became celebrations of survival. The tribe's mood lightened visibly as the reality of Karul's defeat spread. Children who had been quiet with fear now played openly. Warriors relaxed their vigilance. Sam disappeared with several Zirtan mechanics, eager to examine their technologies. Lena continued assisting the tribe's healers, exchanging medical knowledge. Kyle found himself approached by curious tribe members, many wanting to hear the story of Karul's defeat firsthand. It was late afternoon when Terissa finally sought him out, finding him resting near one of the oasis pools. How is shoulder? She asked, settling beside him. Better, thanks to Lena. Kyle studied her face. And you? How does it feel to be chief? Not yet, chief, Terissa corrected. Council must confirm, but a small smile touched her lips. It feels right, like returning to proper path after a long detour. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the suns begin their descent toward the horizon. What happens now? Kyle finally asked. Council has approved resources to help repair your vessel, Terissa said. Your mechanic friend believes it possible with our help. Hope surged in Kyle's chest. And the rest of my crew? Scouts continue searching. One patrol reported wreckage to east. They investigate at first light. Kyle nodded, grateful. Thank you. Terissa turned to face him fully. Spear bond complicates matters, she said directly. You are bound to Zirtan now, to me, yet your path leads to stars. I have responsibilities, Kyle acknowledged. A crew that depends on me. People waiting for those medical supplies. I understand duty, Terissa said quietly. It is backbone of Zirtan life. Another silence fell between them, heavier this time. There is precedent, Terissa eventually said. Ancient stories tell of bonded warriors who parted ways, but remained connected by spear oath. They would return to each other's aid when called. A long-distance relationship, Kyle translated with a slight smile. Of sorts, Terissa agreed, the concept clearly unfamiliar. It is unusual, but these are unusual times. Kyle considered her words. I'd come back if you called, he said simply. That's not just an oath, that's a promise. Teresa's expression softened. And I would answer your call, Kyle Reed, across desert or stars. The council meeting that evening was brief but significant. Teresa was confirmed as chief, with her brother as her primary advisor. Raken was sentenced to exile, a punishment considered more severe than death among the Zirtan, who valued community above all else. Plans were approved to send warriors with Sam to assess the crashed ship and begin repairs. Additional scouts would continue searching for the missing crew members. As the meeting concluded, Teresa stood before her people, her posture reflecting her new authority. Zirtan have survived this challenge as we have survived all others, together, she declared. We will rebuild what nomads destroyed. We will honor ancestors' cut with new traditions. And we will remember that strength comes not from abandoning the vulnerable, but from protecting them. Her golden eyes found Kyle in the crowd. We will also remember that wisdom can come from beyond our desert, that bonds can form between stars. The tribe responded with a traditional chant, their voices rising harmoniously in the cool evening air. Later, as Kyle prepared to depart with Sam and the repair team at dawn, Teresa visited him one final time. She carried a bundle wrapped in iridescent fabric. For you, she said, presenting it formally. Kyle unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was her spear, the same one he had caught days ago, its bone shaft polished to a soft gleam, its tip wickedly sharp. I can't take this, he protested. It's yours. You caught it once, Teresa reminded him with a faint smile. It is yours now. Her expression grew serious. It will remind you of oath, of connection that remains even across void between worlds. Kyle accepted the spear with appropriate solemnity. I'll keep it safe, he promised, until we meet again. Until then, Teresa agreed, touching her forehead to his in the Zirtan gesture of respect. And something more. Dawn broke over Ka-Ren's horizon, painting the desert in shades of fire. Kyle, Sam, and Lena prepared to depart with the Zirtan warriors who would guide them to the crash site. The spear was secured across Kyle's back, a tangible reminder of all that had transpired. Ready, Captain? Sam asked, excitement evident in his voice. After days of being stranded, the prospect of repairs, of home, was energizing. Ready, Kyle confirmed, his gaze finding Teresa where she stood watching their departure. No further words were necessary between them. The bond they shared transcended language, transcended worlds. As the group moved out, following the warriors toward the east where their ship, and hopefully the rest of their crew, awaited, Kyle felt a curious sense of peace despite the challenges ahead. He had come to Ka-Ren by accident, crashed on its hostile surface, faced death multiple times. Yet somehow he was leaving with more than he had arrived with. A bond, a promise, a connection to this world of red sands and blue-skinned warriors. Behind him, Teresa raised her hand in farewell, her figure growing smaller as distance separated them. But the oath remained, spanning the space between them like an invisible thread, unbreakable and eternal. The suns climbed higher, their heat already intensifying. The desert stretched before them, harsh and beautiful. And somewhere beyond it lay the stars, waiting to welcome them home, yet no longer representing the only place Kyle belonged.